Today we'll be talking about the category of supporting connective tissue. The two types of tissues that we'll be talking about today are going to be the cartilage and the bone. So before we get into hyaline cartilage, the first thing that we should discuss would be the general characteristics of cartilage. It has a gel-like extracellular matrix composed of protein fibers and ground substance. Mature cartilage cells are called chondrocytes, and they'll be located inside of a lacuna or a lacunae. And inside of these lacunae, these chondrocytes produce a chemical that prevents blood vessel formation and growth within the extracellular matrix, which means that inside of this extracellular matrix, the only way that a chondrocyte can receive nutrients and dispose of waste products is through the process of diffusion. Cartilage, most of the cartilage has an outer covering called a perichondrium. The outer layer of a cartilage cell usually consists of a dense irregular connective tissue, which provides protection and support, and an inner cellular layer containing stem cells called chondroblast. So the first cartilage that we'll discuss would be the hyaline cartilage. It is the most common cartilage in the human body. It does have a glassy appearance to the extracellular matrix. As mentioned before, each lacuna would house a mature chondrocyte, and these are covered with perichondrium. Their function is to provide smooth articulation for movement at joints and support soft tissue. An example of this would be the articular cartilage at the end of long bones. The next cartilage that we'll be discussing would be the fibrocartilage. Interesting, in a fibrocartilage, its main job is for absorption of shock, and with that, these do not have a perichondrium. So there is no perichondrium located along or around the chondrocytes. But what we do see is the introduction of parallel collagen fibers, and these parallel collagen fibers provide a more resiliency and shock absorption type of a nature. They still have the lacunae, and each one of the lacunae will have a chondrocyte housed within. So this slide here shows a chondrocyte housed within a lacunae. They're very resistant for compression, as found inside of the intervertebral discs, and they absorb shock also. And we find this in the pubic symphysis and also in the meniscus in our knee joint. And finally, the last type of supporting cartilage tissue that we see is called the elastic cartilage. So all the characteristics are still the same. We see that it has chondrocytes housed within a lacunae, but we also see that it has an abundant amount of elastic fibers. This allows for permitting extensive flexibility, changing in shape while returning back to its normal position after being stretched. We see this in the external portion of the ear, and there is a perichondrium present in this example of elastic cartilage. And finally, we get into the last type of supporting connective tissue called bone. There are two types of bone. There's a compact bone and a spongy bone. We'll be centering most of the discussion today on compact bone. So bone or osseous tissue, the volume of ground substance inside of a bone is very small. So looking at this slide, we can see that there's not a lot of ground substance. 2/3 of the matrix of bone consists of a mixture of calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate. The rest has a amount of collagen fibers that help act as a reinforcing rod for the bone. So when we're looking at this, some of the key features that we see in the bone are the osteome. So the osteomes are cylindrical in shape. So this whole thing would be considered to be an osteome. They're cylindrical in shape and run parallel to the shaft of long bones. Each one of these osteomes is going to have a concentric ring that goes around a central canal called the lamella or lamellae. So these lamellae house the mature bone cells called osteocytes. And again, they encircle the central canal. This central canal, located in the middle of the osteome, is what is going to bring nutrients into the osteocytes. Then a structure called a caniculi, which is attaching each one of the osteocytes together. These caniculi form a branching network for exchange of nutrients between the blood vessels and each one of the osteocytes. So every osteocyte that's located in these concentric rings are sharing nutrients and disposing of waste products, and all that material is coming from the blood vessels that are coming up through the central canal. That concludes the lecture on supporting connective tissue.